On this webcast, we're going to tell you the 2 questions you need to answer in order to grow. Let's go. Hey everybody, this is Antoine Dupont with Katapult.Marketing, and this is webcast number 42, and we have Tamsen Webster in the house. Hi Tamsen, how are you?
Hello Antoine, I'm delighted to be on episode 42 because any Douglas Adams fans out there would know that that's the answer to like the life, universe, and everything, so I'm very excited.
Very cool. Well, number 42, that's why I've been waiting for you all this time. Number 42. So, yeah. Tamsen, for the people in the public speaking world, you're famous, you're a legend among us, we love you. But for the few people out there that don't know you, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do for a living, and what gets you up in the morning.
Well, as you say, I'm Tamsen Webster. I am a recovering marketer. So I spent most of my years in brand and message strategy, and I help people see how they see so they can change what they do. So what that means is I spend most of my days now, I run a company called Find the Red Thread, and I help businesses and individuals build the big ideas that bring the big impact that they're looking to have. So you can think of that as message strategy. You might think of that as brand and position strategy, but it's basically how to talk about what it is that you do in a way that makes other people want to do it too.
That is very cool. So I wouldn't assume that you have a video series about that, the Red Thread, right? So
I do.
Yeah,
I do because for whatever reason, recording videos every week is much easier for me than writing. So I do write every 2 weeks. I put a blog post up, but every week I do a short video. And that's a challenge to myself. Can I get across some kind of big idea that's helpful to people in about 8 minutes or less?
Okay, cool. So there are 2 places where you can get that. You can go to Facebook. You look up for Tamsen Webster, and you're going to find the Red Thread video series, which is there. So I follow Tamsen, and I get to see that. And she's also on YouTube. If you go on YouTube and look for Tamsen Webster, she has a channel. So this is where you can find this stuff. It's great stuff, by the way. I like it. It's short videos, 4 minutes, gives you the essentials. This is cool. So Tamsen, today we want to talk to business owners out there trying to make a mark, trying to, figure out what else could I do? What could I do to improve, my business, help me grow, help me find my way and whatnot. Before we started the show, I asked you for 2 things. And the first one you mentioned, and I loved it immediately, was know who you are for. So this is the rule number 1, know who you are for. What do you mean by that, Tamsen?
Well, I think obviously most of us, when we start a business or are serving our clients and customers, know what I call the category people. We know that we're for real estate agents or salespeople or speakers or authors or whatever it might be. But what I have found over the years is that what's even more important than understanding the category of people that you serve is what mindset are they walking through the world with. And what I mean is, what is it that they want? What is it that they value that you also value? What is it that's getting in their way that you can help them solve? Because if you think about it, there are certain things that each of us believes to be true about the world. And this is true about business too. So for instance, my husband and I joke a lot about this. Like if I were to sum up one of my worldviews in a classic proverb, it would be that a stitch in time saves 9. Like it's really important to me to find an efficient, fast way to make things easier for people. So I asked my husband the same question, and he said, the second mouse gets the cheese. So, right. Most of people are like, it takes them a minute. What? But if you think about it, what that worldview is about is waiting a little bit to see where the best answer actually lies. Because, in the case of 2 mice, the first mouse is the one that gets killed by the trap. The second mouse gets the cheese. And, so this explains a lot of our perspective. But what's interesting is if you think about it from a business standpoint, if I operate a business, it's all about efficiency and the fastest way to do something. I mean, for me, it's also the best, but it's like, if I'm about efficiency and somebody who I'm trying to market to or sell to is really about exploration, I've got a much, much harder job to convince that person that efficiency is the answer when they actually prefer to sit back and explore first. And so it's things like that I mean, when you know who you're for. And, when I'm working with clients on this, one of the first things I ask them is, well, what is it that these people want? Like, what is it that they're trying to get in the world? Because that can, if you share that goal, then that's all, that's a first place to start. I ask people questions like, what's a value that you have that they also have? So for instance, I was working with a corporate client on this, and, their answer to, so it's a company that makes medical and scientific devices. And, they say, well, we know our customers and our clients really want to publish, the results of their work, of their scientific research and their work. Because there's all sorts of reasons why that's a good idea, but that's really what those people want. And so I asked that question about what's something that you value, that your customers, the people who you serve, your people also value. Right. And they said credibility. And so I like to test that. I said, well, are there people who are out there who want to publish their scientific research, but credibility actually isn't the driving force behind that? Maybe it's fame, it's fortune. Absolutely. Right. And from that, we could say, well, then it makes sense, doesn't it? That those two things, okay, I want to publish, I want credibility, are going to lead to a willingness to pay this company's premium prices for their products than somebody who doesn't value credibility. Got it. Yeah. And it can also help you say, well, do I actually want to market or sell to the people who don't value credibility? Because it's going to be a really difficult conversation and a difficult persuasion, a difficult effort. We're going to have to spend a lot of time and money over time in order to do that. And second, would we want their business if what they're putting out there is not something that we also would be proud of? Would we want our stuff to be used in things for somebody who isn't credible? So I use that as an example to say it's just really important to understand who you're for at a kind of mindset level, at a universal truth level.
Do you have tools you recommend to people to use? I mean, outside of, I can imagine, one of the ways to discover that is to hire Tamsen Webster. But are there tools that you recommend out there for people to do some self-discovery and kind of doing? And I believe I'm going to be I'm 53 now. I've been in business for a long time, for over 25 years. And I just so wish I would say in the last couple of years, I've been spending a lot of time there, but I so wish someone had approached me when I was a young man and saying, okay, figure out who you are for, because then you'll be in your flow, then you'll be doing what you're meant to do. And everything is going to work out. Yeah. So I'm all ears. I think this is probably one of the most important conversation that anyone can have. But it's not an easy conversation, and it's not an easy self-discovery. What tools do you recommend?
So I think there's some, for the people out there who prefer kind of third-party validation and tactical stuff, there are some things that you can look at. One of the most obvious, I think, is to look at the keywords that people use to find you and find your business, because that will tell you what are they looking for when they're coming to you. And that usually will give you some hint as to how they're looking at the situation and how they're looking at it in the first place. Okay. So that's one of the kind of tactical way. Can you do some, once you've got some ideas, you can you can use straight up research too of people, of quantitative, qualitative research, where you're asking current customers, current clients, why did you come here? Like, what is it that you wanted? What is it that you valued why did you choose us? Why did you choose me? You can survey prospective people and say, well, what is it that you would want out of there? And I would suggest open-ended questions to that. When you're trying to find information like that, you're really trying to say, just give people an open question to which they can answer anything, and then start to see if you can see patterns in it. So that's the
looking externally, like having the external feed you some data back. Do you have something like we're looking inside?
Absolutely. So one of the things is just who do you like to work with? When you have had successful relationships with your customers and clients, what do those people look like? What do they care about? What's the language that they use? When you haven't had those successful relationships, why not? And the thing is, you can look at patterns of yourself as well to kind of reveal what it is that has driven what you've done in the past. So, I will often challenge people, I can ask you, Antoine, have you ever left a job? Have you willingly left a job? Because there was, and the other question is, okay, well, why did you leave that job? It wasn't just because there was something better out there. I'm going to guess there was something about where you were that represented a split from who you are.
Right, absolutely. Or, another way to look at it is looking at your current clients. And I was just having a conversation on Friday about some clients that I don't enjoy working with. And then I was very clear about how their behavior was just, I just didn't care for it. And I know that, and also inside of my work, what I'm doing, what I'm discovering is I just really like to work with people that are up to something. As opposed to, and you and I were talking about, as opposed to people that just want to make money, right? It's just there's nothing wrong about it.
No.
And I think that, when they're up to something that may lead to them making a shitload of money, is pardon my French, but, it's not the avenue. It's not about, really all about the dollars and cents. Yeah. This is a great, powerful conversation that just really getting grounded of who you were meant to serve and who you are for.
Because it also makes it a lot easier to understand when things go wrong. And so listen, I'll be the first to tell you that I obsess about negative critique and negative feedback. And if things aren't working, I will always look to myself as the source of what went wrong first. And then after that, I will say, okay, if somebody didn't like something, I can say, okay, I hear what they're saying. I mean, there is, I like to say squeaky wheels squeak for a reason after all. There's a reason why someone didn't like something. But once I take that in and kind of test it against what what's valid about that, oftentimes my next question is, but are they my people? And because it's like, okay, well, I hear that, but I'm not for them. I'm actually not trying to figure those people out. So, I was testing, to your point, some taglines to use for my website relaunch. And, one of the ones that really speaks to me is make your ideas irresistible. And one of the things that I heard back from some research that we did was that some people were like, well, that implies that my idea isn't already irresistible. And I'm like, and I have no problem with that feedback, because those aren't my people. People who don't think they have nothing to work on aren't my people. They're just not my people.
Right. It's the same thing as get in the shape of your life. It's like, what do you mean? Like, I'm not in good shape. And I'm like, well, you're not my audience. It's obviously for people that may think their shape is not as good as it could be, then you're my audience. It's absolutely super important what you just said. It's like, and I've experienced that looking at some negative comments, and you get stuck on it and it just goes in your head and you're like, no, I'm not listening to that. But it's true. I think I think that's a great way to approach it. Are these people for me?
Right. And
am I for them? Are they for me?
Yeah, it comes from a piece of handed down wisdom that I got from one of my best bosses. And it was a piece of advice or a piece of wisdom that she had received from hers. So this is I love this gifted wisdom. And this was, when I was still working for other people at that point. And there was an interaction that had happened at work, and she was giving me feedback about it. It wasn't entirely positive, but it was done with love, which I appreciated. And what she said to me was, she said, listen, when it comes to what people think, or their expectations or their opinion or whatever, it's not up to you to decide whether or not they're wrong or right. Like that's not, or whether or not they had enough information to know what your intent was or whatever. That she's like, their experience is their experience. And you have two things to do after that. The first is to decide if that person's opinion is one that you need or care about. Because if because that's back to who are your people. Because if they're not your people, then that's psychic baggage that you don't need to carry. But if you do care about those people, if you do care about that person's opinion or those customers or those kinds of people's opinion, then the second thing that she said to me that we had to solve is, then you need to think about what in their experience that you controlled led them to that opinion. And now what can you do differently? Because that's how so it's this kind of two-stage thing of like, do you care? And if you care about that person's opinion, then it's on you to figure out, well, what was the experience that led to it or changed it? But ultimately, I think that's what we as business people, we have to know who is it that we really are there for, because we cannot be for everyone. By definition, we're not going to be for everybody.
It's impossible. And you're going
to save so much mental time and effort, which of course is going to translate to money.
Right.
If you focus your attention on the people who are absolutely already the people you serve, or the people that are likely to be the people that you serve. You're just never going to be able to, there's always going to be some group of people who are just not your people. And why spend your time there? Yeah. Because what you're going to have to do to get them to be your people is change, either make them want something that they don't want, or the reverse, get them to unwant something that they want, or have them change some kind of fundamental belief about how they think things should be. And it's not that you can't change those opinions over time, but it requires over time. Like you have to have that time in order to do it. And that's really as a marketer, that's the lesson. It's like, what can you change quickly and what can you change long-term? And having an understanding of your audience, and what that degree of change is that you need from them, is really key as you're thinking about growing your business and making sure that it's successful.
Okay, very cool. So this was a great, and I knew it that we were going to get into this question, is we're going to take a long time. So we spent a long time on this, but I'd like to hear from you guys watching this. Put in the comments below, who you're for. It's kind of like declare it in the comments. And no feedback, no feedback to one another. Whatever you're for is what you're for, but please resist the temptation to tell someone else, or give them some unwanted feedback.
And I can give you a quick Mad Lib for this, like a quick fill in the blank sentence that can really help you, because this is going to sound simple. This is not easy to fill in.
I'm writing it.
But state it this way. I'm for category of people. So that can be people, that can be leaders, that can be, team members, that can be moms, that can be salespeople, whatever category of people who want X. So that's a goal, a result that they're actively looking for. Who value Y. So that's some kind of, again, value or belief that they have. And here's the key, that you also share.
That I also share.
Yeah. That's the equivalent of credibility in that one example. And then finally, but struggle with Z. So what do they think is getting in their way? And what's the problem they're trying to solve in the path to that goal? So I'm for category of people who want X, value Y, but struggle with Z. And
Very
again,
cool.
it sounds simple. It's going to be hard.
Yeah, yeah, it's just very simple. I'll get this. Give me 5 minutes, right? And then you're going to find yourself stuck with that. So in any case, that's how you're going to do it right there in the comment. Now you've got the template. What are you waiting for?
Right. Do
Uh,
it.
do it right now. All right. The second one was describe the problem you solve. And when you said that, like the sky opened up, there was a ray of light that came down. It was just magical in West Palm Beach right here. Because I think this is it. I mean, the first one was really it, but this one is the second it. What problem do you solve? And I cannot tell you as a web guy, like how many times I see websites that are stating what they're doing, features and benefits, and they're absolutely stepping over the problem that they solve for people. And I think that this is the key to conversion. Once you identify the problem you solve, but in your own terms, how do you see it, Tamsen?
How do I see the problem that I solve, or how do I see?
No. How do you see how business owners should approach it?
Got it. Well, the first and most important thing to me is that you have to state the problem that you solve in the terms that the people you serve would use. So what are they trying to solve? So you may have caught this. If you actually solve the who are you for question using the template I just offered, it's going to push you in the direction of trying to figure out how are they describing it, because your job is not to answer it from your perspective. It's to answer it from their perspective. What do they actively want? What are they actively trying to get? And, so for instance, I would imagine, so a lot of times marketers, for instance, are looking for, they actively want more qualified leads. To turn over to their salespeople. But and that may be the sum total of their problem. They're like, how do I get more qualified leads? But it may also be a finer point than that. They may be actually looking for, like, well, how can I find more qualified leads? Like, how can I use content to get more qualified leads?
Right.
You see, that's a very specific thing. Like, okay,
Right.
I know I need more qualified leads. I've got this piece going. I got that piece going, but man, I'm really struggling on what a content strategy might look like that is trying to convert qualified leads. Or how do I get more qualified leads from a new vertical? So you've got to be thinking about it. Like, it doesn't even matter whether on the back end you're selling web services or you're selling positioning or differentiating. Like, all of those people could potentially sell to someone who's trying to find more qualified leads. But it starts to narrow in when you say, okay, well, what's their specific problem that they're trying to solve? And we must resist the temptation to say, well, I know what they're really looking for, because they don't. They don't.
No.
They don't know what they're really looking for. And your job over time is to start where they are and move them, from focusing on what they're currently focusing on as the answer to focusing on what you're offering as the answer. So, there's a client of mine who has this great phrase. His name's Dr. Dan Diamond. And he has this wonderful phrase that he uses and he hashtags it. It says, "We go where we look." And I love that, because it's so true. We go where we look. And when we think about our customers, clients, prospective customers, that's what they're doing too. They're going where they look. Now, here's what we tend to do as business owners and marketers is we tend to say, well, let me get them to look somewhere else. Man, that is hard work to get them to look somewhere else, because it means you have to get their attention. You have to convince them that it's worth looking someplace else. And so, building on the first thing we talked about, knowing who you're for, if you know who you're for, then you start to already know where they're looking, which means you already know what direction they're heading, which means now your job is not to get them to look somewhere different. It's to see something different in where they're already looking. And that's a huge difference. We don't want them to look somewhere different. We want them to see differently where they're already looking. So let's say that somebody's looking for, how do I use content to convert more qualified leads? their focus right now might be, well, maybe I need to be on Snapchat, or maybe I need to be on WhatsApp, or maybe I need to and their focus is really all on the channels. Like, okay, clearly I need to figure out like, what channels do I need to be in?
Mm-hmm.
But maybe it's your perspective that, well, the channels are important, but if we're not making sure that the content that's going through those channels is, let's say, solving a problem, then it doesn't matter how good those channels are. So what you're trying to do is saying, okay, I'm already looking in the direction of qualified leads, and I'm already looking at the channels. And what my job is, if I'm trying to get them to look at what my business does, and I'm not saying I don't do this for people, so please don't ask me to do this for you. Right. If I'm, my job is to say, you know what, you're right, you need to look at the channels. And you also need to be looking at what's the quality of the content going through those channels.
That's right.
Because once they go, oh, right, there's more to this picture. Like, all you're doing is adding detail to the picture that they're already looking at.
Right.
Then you start to say, see, that's a much easier conversation to have with someone, to go, oh, great, I'm already doing it partly right. So I'm not being told that I'm being, stupid or wrong or whatever for why would you look at the channels? Well, the channels are important, but we need to look at the content that's going through them as well. And so, then what we need to figure out, and this is where the value comes in, that value that you share with them comes in. You need to tell them something that they would acknowledge as a universal truth.
Right.
That would make it impossible for them now to go back to only looking at the channels. Right?
Yeah.
Because if I'm looking for qualified leads, and now I know that it's not just the channels, but the content, right? Yeah. Then I need some kind of universal truth that says, the quality of the content determines the quality of the lead.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and
the quality of the problem you solve, it's going to give you the quality of the leads, because if you pinpoint that, if you put that nail on the head, then of course you're going to get qualified leads.
Right. So now if I say that and they go, oh yeah, that's true. See, now it's impossible for them to only focus on the channels. So let's say I'm a digital marketing services company that really is a content forward approach. Then that's now I'm going to say, well, that's why here at ABC Digital Marketing, we focus on, on generating the right content in the right place to get the right people for your business.
Yeah. And that's, and
here's how we do that. Now you can talk about features and benefits, but before that, you have to really say, here's the problem you're looking at. You're trying to find qualified leads. Hey, we know how to find qualified leads, and we know how you're trying to find them right now. Hey, you're looking at the channels. Makes sense, but and we look at the channels too. But here's what we're looking at about those channels. We're looking at what flows through those channels. Oh, okay, that's interesting, they say. Why are you looking at what flows through channels? Well, because we believe that it's the quality of the content that drives the quality of the lead. Maybe it's something else that's more specific than that, but then they start to go, oh, well, that's true. So now they say, oh, okay, well, so that means in order for me to really drive qualified leads, I need to make sure that I have qualified my content too. Yeah. Not just the channels, but the content. And then you explain what you do in that context. So I think that really understanding what problem you solve for your client is actually twofold. We had said originally, can you describe it in the language they would understand? And then you need to be able to layer in, how does that relate to the problem as you see it? Because that's really what we have to do in order to get people to see why
you go super deep. This is really, really awesome, because you're adding a level. I mean, I have an approach with this when I talk to my clients. Is this the last thing you want to say is what you do, because nobody cares. We already know what you do, but it's like, what do they get? What do they get? And in order for you to say what they get, you have to be clear on what they want. And
Mm-hmm.
if you know what they want, then you have to be grounded in their pain. What is their pain? And I actually then break down the pain. So I'm seeing, like I says, I thought I came to you for a website. I'm like, stay with me. It's going to be great. And I'm like, okay, there's three kinds of pains they have. They have an external pain. This is all Don Miller story brand type of thing that we follow this methodology. External pain, internal pain, and philosophical pain. And then we position whatever you do as a solution to that. And we usually stay on the internal and philosophical pain, because the external pain is, I want more leads. Okay, got it. So that's the pain. But what does that make you feel? Well, it makes me feel anxious, and it makes me feel, I don't know if I'm going to, make payroll at the end of the month. Got it. Okay, so you're anxious. Ever feel anxious about not making payroll at the end of the month, and like, bam, all of a sudden people like, clicking on your buttons, and they don't know why. The philosophical pain is also interesting. It ought to be different. It shouldn't be like this. What are people saying that are at the core of their pain? And I think this is, again, I thought the first point was the most important one, but I think now I changed my mind. The second one, describe the problem you solve. Yes, this is it. Yeah. Like, listen, you want to know two things to grow your business beyond your wildest imagination: know your four and describe the problem you solve. Yeah. This is it, Tamsen. We solved all the problems of the world.
We did, but it leads to a third thing. And I think this is probably a great, either a great place to just touch on or tease your watchers and listeners with. But you see underneath all of this is that you have to understand how you see the world drives what you do in order to get someone else to see the world the same way. And so that's the thing. A lot of times we come to our business ideas, our product ideas, our positioning, because it just feels right. But we've never really gone in and figured out, to use hopefully a metaphor that would resonate with you, we haven't actually looked at the source code for all of that. We see how it behaves on the surface, right? We're like, oh, well, this thing looks right. This thing feels right. But as you know, all of those things on a computer or on a website are driven by code. And each of us, and as individuals and as businesses, we have a code that is driving the decisions that we make. And it isn't usually the thing that we post up on the wall as the value or the mission or the vision. Sometimes it touches on that, but we have to look back at those things. Like, what kinds of problems am I over and over again drawn to solve? I am personally drawn to solve problems of gaps between potential and reality. I'm drawn to solve problems of efficiency, of misdirected energy, all of those things. And they're all related to each other. But I can look back at my career and all the work that I've done and the work I do now for clients and say it's always has been, is, and always will be about that. So the more that we as business owners can understand what is that invisible connection between how we see and what we do, then we're able to explain that to other people, because it's those pieces that other people have to understand. A lot of times, I'm sure you're familiar with Simon Sinek's Start With Why. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And the way that I look at it is that why, he's talking about that why being the beginning of a relationship with your clients, right? And I see that why as the end of a relationship with yourself, because that why is actually the product of this code. It's the product of what are you trying to do as a person or a business. It's a product of what kinds of problems are you trying to solve in the language you yourself, the business owner, would understand. It's a product of these truths about the world as you see it. Yeah. Those things add up to why you do what you do. And then you can explain it to other people.
But you have to be grounded in the who and the how.
Absolutely.
How you solve that to get to the why. And that actually, that really threw me in the loop when I saw the Simon Sinek, and I started to look for my why. Like, why do I get up in the morning? I didn't have a clue.
Right.
Like, why do I get up in the morning? And what I uncovered ironically, in doing the research and just like saying, why am I getting up? I got my who. Who am I? Who am I here to serve? And it is, so now you can backtrack, and so now I'm doing the work and the who and the how, but I'll get to the why. I think he was absolutely dead right about the why. It's super important.
Completely.
But you can't get your why unless you have your who and your how.
You can't get your why into, absolutely. I mean, I see it as like that why is the product of other whys. Like, why are you doing this? Like, what's the outcome you're looking for as a business? Like if you're going to start something, if you're going to start a new product line, if you're going to become an entrepreneur, if you're going to go to a new job, whatever it is, why are you doing that? You know, and then if you're serving other people, A, who are they? But B, you have to know who they are, because you need to know, why would they care? Right? So it's why am I doing this? But why would they care? And then there's yet another why, which is, why aren't they getting it right now? Why don't they think they're getting it? Why aren't they actually getting it? Why don't they care? And then the final why that leads to like the next big why is, why does that bother me so much? What do I believe to be true that makes it impossible for me to imagine a world where the people I serve are suffering from a problem I know I can solve for them? Right? Yeah. So for instance, you know, I completely believe that everybody has already the resources they need to solve whatever they're trying to get to, that what got you here to where you are will get you to whatever there you're looking for. So with that true belief, like, it drives me nuts when I see a gap between somebody's potential and reality, because it's like, well, it's right there. You're like, the basis, like, if you know, the basis of your positioning, the basis of your differentiation, the basis of where you should go next with a brand pivot, the basis of what you're, you know, of where you could expand safely from a client segmentation or a vertical. It's already right there based in the code. Like, so if you look at that code, you'll figure it out. So I think for me, like, that's, you know, the kind of the hidden third thing is that, you know, fundamentally what we're trying to do with our businesses is we're trying to change other people's minds, but we can't do that until we know our own first.
Very cool. That is so true. So I want to hear from you guys listening, and I put it in the comments. What are the problems you solve? You know, if you really look at, you know, deep, what is the problem that you're solving for your customers? That is, you know, and whatever pain, challenges, or issues that they're having, you are solving that. Put it in the comments below. Now, Tamsen, thank you so much. This was awesome. If someone is watching this video and it says, I need more of Tamsen, she's awesome, how do they get a hold of you? Where is the best way to contact you, and who you're here to serve?
That was a bunch of questions all at once. I'll answer the easiest one first, which is that if you're interested in what I do and contacting me, TamsenWebster.com and contact TamsenWebster.com/contact. You know, I like to say that I'm for, you know, big thinkers who want to make their ideas irresistible. So that can be business owners. Oftentimes I do a lot of work with entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, but it's people who want the next big idea to be theirs. And so what I do is I help people build that next big idea.
I know we're going to be working sometime together, Tamsen, no doubt. I am extremely grateful that you came on the show. I know I'm cut you into vacations and big travel and whatnot, so I'm very grateful that you actually got you when you're in town. And on that note, thank you so much, and I can't wait to see you on the stage somewhere in North America.
Looking forward to it. Antoine, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.